Yeah, sure. Today I have a package idea that I've been working on. It's not anything near completion, and I don't even know whether what I'm trying to do here is kind of okayish, right or wrong. And I'm just hoping that what I'm trying to do is not abusing the event handlers and things like that we have in Umbraco. So the situation, the scenario is like this. So a few weeks ago, I was given a little bit of a challenge from work saying we want to be able to use feature flags. That's one thing. And the feature flags need to, of course, turn off things on and off on the website. But for me, feature flags are not something that would work well in a CMS situation, especially when you have editors across the globe and when you have CMS in the as a middle person where editors go in and edit content. There is no way I can communicate to all the editors saying that here is a field, please do not use it. It just wouldn't work. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is that we wanted to deploy unfinished pieces of work into our environments as well, but still have it turned off. Within an Umbraco world, again, it won't work because you might have document type changes or data type changes. I'm more concerned about the document type changes here, and there is no way for me to control that when I deploy my changes into an environment. So it's not something I'm personally happy about, but I was given a challenge. So I wanted to see whether something can be done about it. We use usync quite heavily to sync our document types and data types. I'm pretty sure most of us uses using here, but that means I don't have any control. Even if I don't use usync, I don't have any control over what gets deployed into my document types because that's how Umbraco works. I cannot turn properties on and off in a document type. And unless and until I have that feature flags won't work very well in any CMS based environment. So I've been doing a bit of a prototyping to see whether this works. So you can completely tell me that I am totally mad. This is edge case. I should not do it, and I'll be totally fine with it because what I've been doing so far, even if I have to bin the entire piece of work, I've still learned something from it, which is what is important. So let me share my screen here. Let me know if you can see my screen. And Umbraco, can you see?
Yeah, we can.
So it is the hidden properties.local that you should be seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. So with Umbraco 8.7, I can have content apps in my document types. So what I investigated was, is there a way I can have a extra database table somewhere in Umbraco where I can save properties which are to be hidden? So of course, we can have database tables when the application boots up. We can have a table written to the database. And for every document type that I create, I've created a little view which can turn off non-mandatory fields alone. Mandatory fields I cannot turn off because even if I turn it off, the validation still kicks in when someone tries to save and publish or even save a piece of content based on that document type. So I can say non-mandatory fields. I want to hide a particular property. In this case, I've got so I've been testing basically with every data type in Umbraco. I haven't quite finished it yet. I have a mandatory and non-mandatory version of every data type that I have that we know in Umbraco. In this example, it's checkbox list. And I have turned off the non-mandatory field in Umbraco. And what happens in the content then is the non-mandatory field, which I marked as hidden, does not show up in the content node, which means I can save and publish. So this is the CMS aspect of it. I've been talking to M before I signed up for this because I wanted to check whether this is kind of a valid thing to present as well because it's so edge case. And he gave me some ideas saying that uh, just marking a property as hidden is not quite there yet. We want the content editors to be given the access or the rights to say whether it's ready to use as well. So which means that I'll need to write some more extension methods around it. Um, but this is where we stand. I haven't got to that portion yet. But what it does is upon the editor model loading, it reaches out to the database table and checks for this particular document type, any of the fields are hidden. And if so, it hides all those fields which are marked as hidden in my custom database table. So it works, as far as I can see, for most of the data types that I have done. So if I go into, say, the content picker and mark something as hidden here, and if I go back, I won't be able to see that, and it still works perfectly. But this is so edge case. It is so specific to the requirements that have been given. And trust me, this is not the way I have done it at work. I haven't even gone near it. We haven't even got anywhere near it. It's just investigating whether this is feasible. This is so edge case, but I thought it's okay to present and see what others think of it. It's a mad idea. I know in my deepest of my soul that I should probably not be doing it, but it's always worth sharing. So, what are your thoughts on it? And I am not in favor of this personally, because I know that unless and until there is a neat way of doing this inside the CMS itself, it won't work, because I'm already starting to hit issues when it comes to, I think, nested content and probably multi-node tree pickers as well, where you have minimum nodes set up, and um, in the scenario where you have a multi-node tree picker with a minimum number of nodes. So in that instance, even if my uh, property is non-mandatory, it still fails the validation. So these are catches I have got from this. But this is what I have as an idea in my head. I don't even know whether I'll complete this and take it to fruition, but it's always worth sharing, because it's from ideas like this that packages are created in Umbraco. So what do you think?
Well, I actually have a use case where this could be possibly handy. I've got a website that I'm currently migrating from Umbraco 4 to Umbraco 8. Now we're pretty much, it's in its final stages now. But as part of the migration, I didn't want to actually delete the old properties. I wanted to keep them around, because I've got some scripts that migrate from the old properties to the new properties. And then, of course, at the end, you just go and delete them all. But throughout development, I've had all these tabs called legacy content, legacy whatever. But it would have been quite handy just to be able to hide those particular properties in the way that you're currently doing it, or something similar. About the authentication, you might be able to hijack, I don't know how, but if you could somehow hijack the property list as you're rendering the content item, you should be able to filter out the ones that you want to hide, and that way they won't actually come up when you do the save and publish. And therefore you should even be able to manage the ones that are mandatory or have other validation criteria possibly.
Yeah, so these are
I actually
as well.
I actually wrote this for v4 and 6. So the package was called UHideZ. It's just basically a DOM hack. Never ever actually remade it for v7. I mean, ultimately what you're talking about is property level user permissions. And like, yeah, you can do a DOM hack. The easiest thing to do is just do it by role. So in my case, I just said, okay, if you're an admin, you can see everything. If you're not, then these are the things that will be hidden. If you wanted to do database stuff, then you could go with the key value table that Umbraco has. So if you want to store stuff in the DB, I have a package called Open Key Value, and that will just give you just like a really simple interface to write and read to that table. But yeah, UHideZ did what you were talking about. I just never could be bothered learning more Angular.
What's interesting about this is that Pete Gregory's just asked me a very similar question about how to do something very similar, and Anthony's exactly right. Basically, being able to filter out properties or tabs based on some criteria effectively means that you can have very granular user permissions. And I guess we've always said, of course, you can do very granular user permissions with events, but, and I think this is a problem that you'll run into as well. So with the editor model event manager, which is a C# event, you can edit the JSON model before it goes to the editor. You could filter out tabs or properties or whatever you want, and they won't show. And that's super easy to do in C#.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done here. So in my
I guess
here,
the main issue you'll see though is when there isn't a property there, and then it posts back to the server.
yeah.
The server assumes the value for the hidden properties because they're missing is null. So if you had values there before,
Nukes your data.
you no longer have values there anymore. So my answer to Pete was, can you do that? I was like, well, ideally you should be able to do this because that's a great way to do flexible sort of granular user permissions. But I don't believe that the server is currently capable of handling that. I don't think it would be terribly hard. It's just about the data binding on the server level to check what properties were passed, and if those weren't passed, to don't just leave it as is in the database.
Well,
Yeah,
like the way that I did UHID was just a DOM hack. So
Yeah,
as long as the property is on that doc type, it's just gonna
it's gonna
just
send
hack
it,
the DOM.
right?
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So that was the easy way to do it. I think that's like there's no point dicking about with data models, in my opinion, because it's
Well,
it would just be easy to do it
validation
all
might-
in the C# side. Like if you just hide it and then it just doesn't show up and then it doesn't bind it. I don't know how hard it would be to do. I don't think it'd be that hard because we know the properties that are sent, so we can just and we already look up the model and then bind the existing model. So instead of overwriting it, we just ignore those properties that are missing.
yeah.
I think it would work.
The other thing you could do, it would be less secure, but you could presumably at this point where you've got open Poornima, you could just change the property header type to be a hidden text field.
Yep. So you could change it to a label or just hide it or whatever. I think you'll end up with white space on the page.
yeah, but
I'm thinking of form.
manage that.
But yeah, you
Yeah.
could
You could
change
have
the
a custom-
property editor to be like a nothing property editor. So it doesn't show anything, but the value's still there. Kind of like a label, but I think you'll end up with white space.
There's still render a spot for the
Yeah. But then you could also render a property editor that doesn't show anything that has JavaScript to shrink your white space.
Well, the other thing you could do to retrieve back the properties that you've removed would be effectively to hook into the before save event possibly, and just repopulate from the previous version.
Yeah, but you'll run
hidden
into
properties.
probably data consistency problems.
Mm,
I think you'll run into data consistency problems anyway if multiple people are trying to save it.
that's true.
But yeah, I mean, you could try to hack the planet that way. It might work.
Yeah, I might actually. I'm still learning about package development. I am quite new to this scenario. So I need to think from the perspective of the user as well as have my developer aspect into this and see how it goes. But the server validation is the first point that I got stuck with. Okay, so I probably have to play around with the non-mandatory fields and then see how it goes. So I can get the non-mandatory fields to hide and pass the validation. The server validation is the first point that I got hit with. The multi-node tree pickers where you have the minimum count set is another point that I got stuck with. I haven't even got into grids, block list editors, and nested content. So I'm hoping a lot of challenges in the nested content world myself. So I'll
I
probably
think
go
if
create.
you don't want to change the core, then doing the Anthony Dang DOM hack way is going to be your best bet. I think changing the property
Gonna be
editor,
the easiest.
yeah, changing the property editor to be like what we just said, a property editor that renders nothing but maintains a value,
Yeah.
which is the one from the server. And then if you want to shrink the white space, you can use JavaScript. I know it's super ugly, but I think that's you're probably the only way you're going to be able to do it today. But we should
Yeah.
change the core. The core should support that, at least in a nicer way.
Because we do it,
Yes.
sorry, we do it at the moment at the tab level on a content type. And again, in that the editor model, event manager, event handler, we're checking the group that the current user belongs to. If they are in the administrator group, we add a value to the additional data on that model. And then when we're in, it does require some changes to Umbraco files, but it's just then when it comes down to rendering the actual property editors, if that additional data value is, false, they're not an admin. We just set a class to hide that control. So we don't remove it. So it's still there. We don't have any issues with mandatory, non-mandatory. Actually, we would if there were any mandatory on that tab, but that's beside the point. So yeah, rather than removing it, we're just visually hiding it so you don't have the issues with with validation and having to remap fields when you come back to saving that data. And at the tab level too, it's a lot easier than at the individual property level because you won't have those issues, properties within nested content because the whole thing's just not rendered. So
Umbraco 8 doesn't have tabs.
Or does it?
So it works, but it would be great. That would be a really useful feature to have that granular control over who sees what, whether it's at a property level or by user or by groups, or it would be really, really useful.
Yeah. I think that's
super easy. There's a hide class. You can just add a hide CSS class to any DOM element and it's gone.
Yeah, that's what we do. But we just use that additional data when that model's being generated to decide which tab we're going to hide so that we can communicate that down to the client, and then it just adds that ng hide class the way to go. And it does the job for now.
That's interesting. So it's all good knowledge I've got so far.
Oh, and I think right. I think it's a really
it's actually really easy. The tricky thing is trying to get the user experience right for the person who has to do the hiding. So the way I did it was I just added I added a hide link next to every property name, and then you just click that, and then it just toggles to hidden. But then again, that's also a DOM hack. So it's actually quite easy. I did it all in a weekend. I should look at the code again. It was done using user controls like back in those days. The JavaScript is horrific.
I think I saw a blog post somewhere as well from Soteris where he has attempted DOM hacks to hide properties inside the CMS. So I didn't fully kind of read through it in great detail, but I know that it is done somewhere. But my brain was straight away going into the editor model. Can I do something inside the event itself when the model renders out? But there are challenges as I see it.
I'm looking at my JavaScript from that package. It's disgusting. It's all jQuery basically, just jQuery DOM hacks.
Well, as you all saw, I like it, and I had a use case for a project I've just finished. Not hiding anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. 6 months too late.
Yes.
Almost every package I've seen so far today has had a use case in my last project.
Okay, so it's good to know that what I'm trying to do here has an actual use case in reality. So that's quite positive. But I think I'll have questions for each and every one of you going ahead who's given me ideas now. I don't even know, as I said, if I will see this to completion, because I do this in my spare time, which is like minimalistic amount of time that I have got in all what I try to do. But yeah, I think it's a learning curve.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good way to learn.
Yeah.
Cool.
that-
Thanks for sharing that, Poornima, and especially, just bringing it out here. Does anybody else have any questions for any of the previous speakers who were, kind enough to demo to us, talk to us? Some of them woke up pretty early as well. Anything? No. Anything else anybody wants to comment on? We've got 9 minutes more to go. Or any other ideas, comments, suggestions, anything is welcome.
I'll just jump in quickly and say thanks to the 3 presenters tonight. It was really interesting. It's not a lot there for me because I'm a little bit higher level. A lot of it goes over my head, but it's really interesting to see some of the things that Umbraco is capable of, and sort of some of the things I can start promising to clients too if they've got a use case for them. So thanks everybody. I appreciate you taking the time.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I would like to add something to the question that Kevin faced, I think, from Mario. So just like Kevin said, in my current project, I use usync just for deploying the settings, which is the document type, data types, and templates. And we actually use usync publish on top of it to deploy content. And we have a much more complicated content flow as well, given we have a content area where 20 different languages will be kind of edited going ahead. And we use Translation Manager to translate our content using the Google APIs. And then we are using that to using publish as well. So I did a fair amount of research around that. And Kevin thankfully answered my questions.